really important that we do that today.
I love it. I'm getting loads of hearts. This is because Fiona is a star. Everybody knows this. Please check out her Instagram. It's Know Your Caribbean, and Fiona is one of our phenomenal board members who has really been with us from the beginning to get the World Reimagined off the ground from an idea into an incredible project and platform for education. And so super excited to be with you here today, Fiona. Let's just dive in. This is going to be very conversational. Folks, if you want to send in questions, we will answer them live. And if there are any things that you just want us to explain, then we're happy to do that. But we figured that maybe we'd first start out just talking a bit about Journey of Discovery, because that's really the core. It's the conceptual framework that we're using for everything across the board, from artistic programs.
I think actually I've lost you. I don't know if it's me. I've lost the audio. I don't know if it's just on my end. Okay, I think you've come back. Okay,
I've come back.
Okay, I think you've come back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right.
Sorry about that. So yeah, so I was just saying that let's dive into Journey of Discovery, because that's really what is our conceptual framework across the entire program, from artistic to community to learning. So I'll start with you on those Journey of Discovery themes.
All right, so guys, all of you who have been looking into the World Reimagined and going on the website, and it feels like really huge and expansive and very overwhelming, this is the whole point of this live, is to kind of help break things down, because I know what it feels like as an artist to do applications, if it's with the Arts Council or any other institutions, and the application process is very long and you get overwhelmed and like, this is too much. So we just had to kind of, guide you through some of the journey of discovery and the application process. So the themes of the journey of discovery kind of takes us through a chronological time period of when we're discussing the legacy of the transatlantic slave trade. So the first topic or first theme in the journey of discovery is Mother Africa. And the reason why I love this theme is because a lot of times, for one, people like to reduce Africa to a country, not a continent. And also that Africa only started to exist the moment, Europeans started to have their involvement through the transatlantic slave trade, as if there wasn't these, thousands of years of existence of beauty and diversity and culture. So Mother Africa is really focused on that aspect of showing the diversity, the history and culture of Africa, pre-colonial Africa, which we think is really, really, really important.
And just to throw out some ideas, because what we want to do in this session is make just some concrete ideas, really, that that help you to frame it. Because as Fiona said, it's easy to get overwhelmed by this topic. It's a massive period of history, and it has still the impact of today. So it's a matter of carving out your spot and your space in this. When we think of Mother Africa, I mean, that's, as you could talk about Timbuktu, looking at something, you can look at a city like that. You can look at some of the flora and fauna of West Africa in particular, since that's where many of the slave people who became enslaved were taken. So, from banana leaves and things that are very much symbols of this area now, those are things that we can look at as exploring that in the globe. And remember also that the globe is just the canvas. So you don't have to do anything related to the continental plates. You don't have to do anything related to a map. You can, that's absolutely, possible and welcomed, but try to think a bit more as the globe as just a blank canvas that you can do anything with and play with that, some of the oddity of that shape. It's going from a 2D design, which you will submit, to really a 3D. So those are a few things to think about with Mother Africa.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There is so much. If you look at, the architecture, even in the Mali Empire, and like all the different, not just the monarchs, but also just even, things like, when you're looking at, like, say, the Orishas, or, even within the religions and all of that, there's so much in that encompasses that aspect of Mother Africa. So the next theme is in the journey of discovery is reality of being enslaved. So this is the one where you could say is kind of seen as the most literal theme in the journey of discovery. But I mean, even within that, there is so much. When we're talking about, what it was like for the capture, life in the Middle Passage, life on the plantations. Even when looking at the Middle Passage, we could even look at things like, for example, if you look at John Newton, who was a man who wrote Amazing Grace, which is seen as one of, like, the quintessential, like, gospels in black churches, but it was written by a slave trader at the time who then became an abolitionist. So even if you did something, an Amazing Grace globe, this is also talking about the reality of being enslaved. So there's so much information, and one of the things I'd like to encourage people is that within the journey of discovery, we also have loads of resources on the website that can kind of help you with, like, visual resources. Like, me as an artist, I like, visual referencing. I like to see, like, old paintings, old drawings, and those kind of things help me a lot when I'm thinking about my storytelling as well.
Perfect. And again, this, like, one of the things I think some artists have expressed some nervousness to dive into this topic, but again, you can go into a very specific aspect of it, and we don't want people to relive or experience trauma, necessarily. So we're quite sensitive to the seriousness of this theme, but at the same time, there are ways that I think artists are really brilliant at to get us to enter into spaces where we're uncomfortable and find an access point. So some thoughts around that.
Absolutely. Of course, reality of being unsafe, that topic is very, very difficult. And also we do like to say that we do have some support. If you as an artist are applying, we're here to help you. If you feel that some of it can be much, or how do you navigate around telling this story, trust me, doing Know Your Caribbean, I read a lot of heavy stuff, and I know what it's like to have to curate and kind of navigate your way through that very difficult histories. So we're here to support you as well. But also it's just looking at the humanity behind this topic as well. Like, even little things like, what did the enslaved eat on plantations? What were their rations like? Like, how many plantains did they get a week? You could do a homage to plantain. You could do something to saltfish. Saltfish is something that you find in so many national dishes. And this is because, why is it that, like, islands who are surrounded by water and fresh fish, then national dishes are saltfish? And saltfish in itself is something that is a legacy of the reality of being enslaved, and how we love saltfish now. So even within that, so we can still work around, finding our way to telling these stories, and that people connect to sound and smell and taste and nostalgia as well. So these are also ways that we can help to connect, the people who come to the trails into these very difficult aspects of our history as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, so in our next theme, when we talk about the legacy a bit, the actual stolen legacy is really what we're calling it. This idea that millions of people were removed from their homes forcibly in West Africa, and eventually in other parts of the coast. And as we look at that removal of people, and also then the commodification of humans, and this trade that came out of it, and how that then was transferred into the British economy. And so so looking at that piece, there are a lot of things, again, to just narrow into, to look at how is that relationship then built, and what was created in the UK. We can look at some of the older institutions, and also this is a place to understand the map, in some sense, that this understanding what goods were coming into and out of the various parts that were related to the transatlantic slave trade. Any thoughts, Fiona, on how to express this theme?
Yeah, I think that this theme is kind of when we hear lots of people say Britain was built on the backs of enslaved people. What do we mean by that? And it's really looking at the financial legacy. So financial legacies are scattered like in day-to-day life. Like one of the things that I want to do in the future is, can you spend a day in the life in Britain not engaging with something that has some kind of financial legacy, the slave trade? And you wouldn't make it very far. Like you could have, if you have in tea, you've already failed. If you had sugar, you've already failed. So looking at, like it's done, it's over. Things like for example, institutions like the British Museum have a very difficult history with Hans Sloane, Sloane Square, looking at the universities, the railroads, even riding the underground, the DLR as well. When you go to the Docklands, these things were built by, those who profited from the slave trade. There's just looking at all of the kind of financial stuff, looking at the estate homes, looking at those who were members of parliament, the amount of parliamentary members who were indeed slave owners, even looking at the fact that 40%, I think it's just over 40% of slave owners were actually women, and they were absentee owners who were based in the UK. So a lot of slave owners were not just the average, or not average, the aristocrat that we see, but would have been some average day-to-day people who were also slave owners. So looking at the entire dynamics, that it wasn't just a small sector of people, like reverends, priests and stuff, were also slave owners, churches, church steeples. And a wonderful, wonderful resource for this specific topic is UCL's Legacy of Slavery database. It is absolutely amazing because they have it where they even have things like statues, gardens, church pews, even they'll even go down to like the minutia of like, this church pew in this church in Leicester was funded by this person who had a plantation in Grenada. So it really goes down to the details. It's not kind of vague, just like open statements, but really, really detailed. Even looking at things like, things that were purchased by the V&A and the British Museum and all of these places, they'll tell you this painting was bought by so-and-so who had a plantation in St. Vincent, and in this plantation, they were growing coffee. So you can really dive into the details. So maybe you might find this painting that tells a story about this specific something. So that within that, there is also so much in that.
I love one of our viewers just talked about unpacking the history, and that's really what this project is about. Let's unpack the history. A lot of this history is just not taught, and so we are relying on you, artists, to dig into the history, find it, and then help us share this and understand it. And one of the really critical pieces, I think, of this discussion is abolition and emancipation. So that is the one topic that you may have learned in school about William Wilberforce and as an abolitionist. And that is absolutely true. He was an abolitionist. But the larger piece of that story is that there were millions probably, or at least thousands of abolitionists in one sense or another, that this wasn't a movement that was created by one person. And it's important to recognize the uprisings and the slaves who were able to advocate for themselves and to understand, or enslaved people, excuse me, who were able to advocate for themselves. And so really expanding our understanding of what that abolition looked like.
Yeah, I agree. I think you know, we often see the painting, am I not a man and a brother, and that kind of thing of, you know, this you know, the seeing this enslaved person kind of bowing and looking up and kind of begging, but actually there's so much empowering history behind that, in terms of all the so many rebellions that happened that kind of really pushed the narrative towards abolition, and then also looking at persons like, yes, we have William Wilberforce, and we have a huge catalog of English people who were part of it. I found a really beautiful poem written by a woman called Sorrows of Yamba, and it's a beautiful poem about the life of an enslaved woman, but it's written by a British woman, an abolitionist. And then, you know, looking at, you know, persons like Mary Prince, who went through a very difficult period, and she was one of the first, you know, Black people to be published in Britain as an abolitionist, and her life story in Bermuda was really difficult to read, but her story was hugely important. So you could do a Mary Prince Globe, you know, these kind of things like that, a homage to her. All of that is part of abolition and emancipation, but, you know, also looking at lives of the apprentices, because a lot of times they say the apprenticeship period after slavery was over, like, yeah, slavery is over, yeah, everyone's fine, like, move on, you know, you're free, do what you want. But the reality of life for formerly enslaved people was actually, in many aspects, much harder than being in enslavement, because a lot of resources were taken away from them. But also just looking at how did these people, we as a people, build up ourselves from nothing, so that we were, you know, on the plantation, given certain provisions, and then after you left with nothing. You need to provide for yourself now, you need to do for yourself. Purchasing land, there were so many laws that were put in place in the Caribbean to negate Black people from being able to purchase land. So how is it that we are able to even have ownership of land? These things are important to look at all of the aspects, or how, even, for example, I found in St. Vincent that, you know, women in St. Vincent, Black women in St. Vincent, struggled really hard after emancipation, because they were given certain resources on the plantation to produce more children, because they were incentivized, and this was taken away from them after emancipation. So these women were left on their own with no support at all. So for women to be able to overcome this aspect of it is hugely empowering as well. So, you know, all of these things come under the theme of abolition and emancipation as well.
Absolutely. I love it. I love this. I love the uncovering of these stories. That's really one of the things that, for me, feels so powerful about this project, is really the tribute to our ancestors across all cultures. Really, you know, the ancestors who fought for what was right. And so getting their stories out just feels like a much needed tribute, and you know, as we don't have memorial right now, hopefully one day we'll have a memorial that's permanent to all of the people who were part of ending, well, all of the people who were in fact enslaved, because there is a memorial to people who ended slavery. But what about the ones who were actually in it? Anyway, I digress. Go back to the, let's go back.
As well, is that even within, I think this did come out, especially with David Olusoga's documentary, when he's talking about the compensation records, and we talk about, yes, we emancipated the enslaved and this whatever, but looking at the compensation that was paid to slave owners, and if you were living in Britain, your grandparents, parents, whoever, up until 2015, all of us were paying money back towards this loan that the government took from the treasury to pay slave owners. So we, in essence, paid money towards compensating our ancestors, slave owners. This is a very, like, when I found that out, I couldn't believe that. So, but yeah, so within that, you know, before we move on to the next theme, it's just to encourage you guys to apply. We really want this, you guys, your voices to be heard on this. We do not want this project to come to fruition and for you to not be a part of this. We really want you guys to head to the website, sign up. I know it feels overwhelming to apply again as an artist, I know. But we really want to encourage you guys, and then also that this is a paid opportunity. We do not expect artists to do things for free. You will be remunerated, because we really want to show the support to artistic voices in this topic.
Exactly. And as far as sculpture trails go, this is one of the larger remunerations that is out there. It is £1,500, and you will also have a budget for £150 for materials. So, and we also are offering studio space to complete your globe. So we don't expect you to have a big old room just hanging out, you know, a big old room in your house to bring in a globe that's 1.4 meters wide and 1.7 meters high with the plinth. We don't expect that. We are going to be a part of helping you bring your idea and your image to fruition. So, so you're not on your own on this. And, you know, we have a phenomenal social media manager, shout out to him. And he also is going to be helping to bring you as a artist into a public view. And so one of the goals and one of the things that I hope as an artistic director is that our artists get more exposure. And that's one of the things, in addition to the money, that we are offering. And then also, just to mention, the bonus is that once the trail is over and we deinstall the globes from the exhibition, the public exhibition, then they will go into auction, and 10% of the net received from that sale will go back to the artist. So again, it's another reason to just come and, you know, send in your submission. Go to our website, theworldreimagined.org. You'll see it on the homepage, and you'll be able to just click right into it. It's short. It's like 10 minutes. Once you have your design, uploading everything, and once you have information, your bio or portfolio or anything that you want to include in your submission, the process is streamlined. It's easy. I promise. And should you have any problems, which I don't think you will, but should you, we have support at hello@theworldreimagined.org. So please use that. We're here. We are ready to help. We just want your gorgeous and exciting and provocative and thoughtful designs. Okay.
And then I think there's a question wanting to know about the location of the project. So it is nationwide. It's currently going to be in 7 cities. So it's going to be in London, Bristol, Liverpool, Birmingham, Manchester, Leeds. What's the last one? I think I'm missing out one. But it's going to be in 7 cities across the UK. There's 5 trails in London, and then we're going to have the other sets of trails in the other cities. So we do not want the project to be entirely London focused. We want this to be something where people from all over the country, it can be accessible to everyone. And that is something that's going to be on the streets for 10 weeks. Between August and till October. So, you know, while it's still warm, you know, you can still come bring your family down, go into the arts trails and stuff and see things. So I hope that helps. So I think it's somewhere that they're in 7 cities, so there's no excuse. Swansea and Liverpool are the other 2 cities. So it's somewhere, so the project will be accessible to basically the whole of the UK. It's not going to be that far for most people. So.
And even our international brothers and sisters will be able to engage. We will have an online platform. We will be highlighting our artists and their designs through Instagram, We'll be using Twitter, all of our social media to really promote the project and again, to promote our artists. So there'll be opportunities, even if you are in, outside of the UK, there'll be opportunities to explore and understand the work that we're doing together. It's really just within the UK, the UK-based artists are the ones who are able to contribute. And that's really just because of studio space and trying to keep a low carbon footprint, not shipping things all over the world. We want to start in the UK, and who knows, maybe it'll grow depending on the success of it. So we need you to start this seedling of our idea so that we can spread it further, because as we all know, the transatlantic slave trade impacted so many people around the world. It still does. And so the story is broad and wide, and we have to get it out as much as possible, right? Okay, so back to our journey of discovery.
I think, yes.
Okay, do you want to do the next one?
Yeah, so I think the number 5 is complex triangle. And within complex triangle, I think for those of us who have Afro-Caribbean parents, we have a very complicated relationship with mother country, which is the UK. So there's this kind of thing about, like, I know in my household, it was a thing of, rule Britannia. When the Queen and stuff would come and visit, it was such a big deal, and it's kind of a lot of very British aspirations, right? So in terms of looking at how that we within the Caribbean and in Africa contributed towards Britain in terms of World War I, World War II, looking at Windrush, all of these contributions that we have made to Britain, but also looking at how Britain responded to us and this kind of very fractured relationship that we have with mother country. That's kind of how I put that topic.
Absolutely. My family is from Barbados, and so and then also from America. So those are two obvious places that are deeply impacted by the transatlantic slave trade. And then being a UK resident, and particularly passing some of the monuments that I know were built by my own people, or passing by, there's the monument to the people who contributed to World War I and World War II, like you mentioned. If we look at it at that alone, you can imagine a globe that looks at different countries that, some of within the empire that are related to the transatlantic slave trade. You can again go back to the map idea, or you can depart from that. And when I think of a complex triangle, we can talk about Windrush and this idea of the passports and this invitation and this citizenship. And so there's really specific things that you can then kind of drill into visually to represent what is that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my interesting finds I found was a poster from like 1917, and it is huge text. Young men of the Bahamas, you must show your. It's on. I posted it on Instagram. It's like, you must show your duty to your king. What are you doing with your time? And that kind of language and how in which they spoke to people from the Caribbean, and how that they had a duty to serve Britain, and then how in which they were received. These things I think are really important, especially this language of that we had this duty. We were very much part of the empire when it was time to serve, but when respected, it was not reciprocated in that way. So kind of speaking about those things I think are really, really important, and that's one of the things I like about this specific thing.
Love it. I always love talking to you, Fiona. I always learn, I always grow. This is a treat for me, and I can tell from all the hearts that it's a treat for everybody else too. So so keep it coming. So when we look at our next theme, what are your thoughts?
So the next theme is Echoes in the Present. Very, very important theme. And within Echoes in the Present, I like within every theme, I always have like a little tagline in my head. And for this one, it is slavery is over, get over it. Right? It's 400 years ago, get over it. Right? No, it started about 400 years ago. It wasn't it ended actually quite recently. But it's talking about all the repercussions of the slave trade and how it has impacted and continues to impact us today. So, for example, I'm a huge fan. Anyone who hears me talk like for 3 minutes, I always bring up the great Sir Hilary Beckles. And in one of his talks, he was looking at NCDs, which are the non-communicable diseases. So we're talking about diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, and that in the Caribbean we have the highest rates of NCDs in the world. Why? And that has to do with our diets that we have inherited, from slavery in terms of high salt, high sugar diets, lots of drinking rum. We all love rum, but it is something that was encouraged amongst enslaved people were incentivized by rum, and this is why we have such a strong rum culture in the Caribbean. But one of the things that Sir Hilary said is that basically our DNA has been altered to the point that our bodies are less receptive to medication for things like diabetes and hypertension and stuff, as opposed to Africans who had never been through the enslavement, or Africans straight from the motherland self. So in terms of how our DNA has literally been altered by the legacy of enslavement, so that we are unable to receive medical care in the way that it has been developed. That to me is a huge echo in the present when they say get over it. When I think it's up to like 90% of households in the Caribbean has someone who will develop one of these illnesses. This is how severe it is. So things like that, or moving on, looking at stop and search, looking at police brutality, looking at things like depression, anxiety amongst people within the community, our stigma towards getting therapy and self-care, or even looking at how our households, like in terms of Black women, are 4 times more likely to be single mothers in the UK. So all of these things are extremely reflective of the legacies of enslavement in terms of fracturing families and developing our diets and looking at showing vulnerability. So how Black men in particular are not very comfortable in kind of talking about their feelings, and how this reflects in maybe domestic violence and all these things within the family household. So when you say slavery done, it's not as simple as that. So this is what we mean about echoes in the present. It's talking about looking at this timeline and how this comes into our present day reality.
Absolutely. And I think on the flip side of that, some of the institutions that gained wealth have continued to gain wealth. Mm-hmm. So on the one hand, see the impact on people with ancestors who were enslaved. And then on the other side, you see people who have had decades and even centuries now of income that has propelled those families or those institutions forward. So that's something to also explore when we look at echoes in the present. There are many different angles, again, to look at all of these themes, and some of them, I think, as an artist, you can dive in and kind of find an interesting angle into that and just bring us into that. Now, I noticed we have been talking for a little while. We said we were going to be about 30 minutes, but let's keep going. Let's finish our journey of discovery. Please, if anybody has any questions, throw them in the chat. We will try to get to them. I know one person did ask about how many globes per city. Just to be super clear, outside of London, each city will have 10 globes. So 9 of those globes will be Journey of Discovery globes, where one artist chooses a theme and that theme is represented in the globe. And we literally walk through this journey of discovery in the chronological order, starting with Mother Africa, ending with Reimagine the Future. And so then in our 10th globe, we will have a local artist who's commissioned directly to work with community members to really bring the transatlantic slave trade into place. So the story of it in Liverpool is different than the story of it in Swansea or in one of our other host cities like Leicester. And that's really important that, again, when people say, oh, it was 400 years ago, or, oh, you know, why are you still talking about this? It doesn't have anything to do with today. That 10th globe really brings it into place so we understand actually it's surrounding you and actually it is in your city. And you should be aware of that. So let's go on to the next theme.
What's the 7th theme again? Is it expanding soul? Is it
Expanding soul is the 8th theme. Before that, so essentially, it's the 7th theme is about celebrating the people who have despite challenges, who are able to prevail. And so really, you know, whether it's musicians or scientists or business people or sports, in any industry, people who we should recognize for their incredible contribution to society.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, this is one of my favorite themes. Like, I always get excited for everyone, but for me, doing history, I read a lot of very heavy stuff, and some very draining to try and find like nuggets and gems to make you feel empowered. And we understand that sometimes when we talk about Black history, it's always like, okay, slavery, you know, trauma, and it's like we need, and then you feel like they only talk about the same 5 heroes every time, like as if that's all we have in the whole entirety of everything. But so this theme is still we rise, and it's just talking about all the heroes and heroines, all the people who have inspired us, especially the unsung ones. We'd really love to like some really different you know, diverse stories. You know, if it's somebody from Montserrat who did something amazing, if you could be from Nevis, it doesn't have to be like the most well-known of the Paul Bogles and stuff from Jamaica. We really want to get these stories out to show just like we've actually, I think, you know, some of the frustration that we have is in Black history is like we're always grasping for heroes when we have so many, and it's just that they're hidden away in corners. You know, I always love finding stuff and I'm like, yo, this person did something really gangster, you know, it's amazing, it's so cool. And we really want people to feel inspired in that same way. So I love this theme so much. So it's all of those things, but it's not also just a people, but it could be movements. It could be some specific, you know, it could be maybe like, I was talking to someone about Walter Rodney from Guyana and the Rodney riots that happened in Jamaica in the 1960s, because he was this huge Pan-Africanist and all the universities were bullying him because they thought he was such a radical, and even doing something about the Rodney riots in Jamaica or something like that. Like, so within that there is so much you know, even looking at, you know, like, you know, the Black environmentalists who plant loads of trees across Africa and things like that. You know, all of that too is still we rise. So you can do something even on just those who are out there to save the environment. It's not just a one-dimensional kind of way that we're looking at that topic.
Exactly. There's so much there. And again, like Fiona said, there's so much joy. Let's find the joy and revel in that and bring that into this theme, which is similar to our 8th theme, which is expanding soul. And that's really where we look at the impact that people of the African diaspora have had on British culture. So, you know, that's when we're talking about grime, we're talking about Jamaican patties, we're talking about all these things that are now really deeply part of British culture. And and celebrating those.
Yeah, expanding soul, another favorite, because I just like you said, the things that impact British culture, but even just the wider world, and understanding like how influential we are, in terms of like music, dance. You know me, I love carnival, all of that kind of stuff. And looking at, even looking at the timeline, I was very fortunate to do a panel. He's on this on the live now. A friend of mine, his name is Gary Collins from Jamaica, and we did a panel talking about the history of dancehall, and it was such a beautiful thing the way he spoke about dancehall being the voice of the people. And yes, it has become entered into the commercial sphere, but the core of dancehall is speaking the voices of marginalized communities. That's what the core of dancehall is. And how it was, and even how they call Calypso the poor man's newspaper. And Calypso may seem as this kind of happy, but it's actually extremely political. So within that, all the things that people enjoy, our hairstyles, even looking at, hip hop music, how hip hop music started in New York, also from Caribbean immigrants who came across and, merging together with African Americans to develop hip hop, and how hip hop also too was a voice of the people. So it's a hip hop globe if you want to, there's so stories like this is the thing, and kind of paying homage to even textiles, different fabrics. I think also like, when you look at artists like Beyonce and stuff, and how she started to incorporate so many things, like once again the orishas and things into popular culture, looking at all of that and how that has become is shaping the culture and so on. And like Carnival, is the largest cultural festival in all of the UK, and it generates 150 million pounds a year. It's a big deal. And then looking at the people who did that, and how the history of Carnival in Trinidad is almost like a race riot kind of thing, incorporating our African history and culture. And then also, fast forward all these years later, and looking at how race riots were developing in West London, and this is what sparked the idea to start Carnival. Was actually all with the Teddy Boys and all the race riots that was happening. It was very volatile at that time, and that's how we respond. We respond with joy. This is how we march. Carnival to me is the longest running Black Lives Matter march. So maybe we could do something about the resistance in Carnival and its social activism as well. So it's not just a party; it has so much to it. So that in itself is expanding soul as well. So
I love that. Oh, please, someone do a carnival, please. So the last theme is Reimagine the Future. And that theme is really, this is an outward looking, future looking project. We need to know our history in order to approach our past, and in order to charge forward and create a better space, a more equitable space for everyone. So this theme really is your opportunity to imagine, what does that future look like? What do I want that future to be? And hopefully this project will help to deliver that. But, we talked to Nicola Green, one of our principal artists, who talked about, she's doing that theme, and she talked about this idea of the environment and how it's related to environmental justice is so much also related to racial justice, right? And so that's a really important and interesting take on this theme. How do we reimagine the future? What does that look like? Any thoughts from you, Fiona?
yeah, I think we have so much frustration around people being underinformed and making what we'd say very ignorant statements and so on, because they don't know the history. So if the whole aim is to make Britain, the wider British public or the world, understand the entire legacy from the very beginning to now, how do you imagine the world now that we are more informed and we know better, and how can we do better? And I think this theme is actually really exciting because it's like a blank canvas. You also be real. If you don't think it's gonna be kumbaya, if you think it's not this, you can also be real. But also we just want to know how in which you think society will improve after knowing all of this history. I think one of the things that we really want to emphasize is for y'all to apply, and that there's 70 globes available for the artist open call. And I'd like to reiterate, for us, as they say, struggling artists, this is a paid opportunity, and it's also because it's a nationwide project that is going to receive a lot of press attention. It's also going to be a great opportunity for other people to be exposed to your work. So we know exposure is not enough, and exposure doesn't pay the bills. Okay, but so therefore we make sure that there is a fee that we pay to artists who are chosen to get their own globe. But can I say also that the globe is like, it's big, you know, it's big, it's beautiful, it's like a massive canvas, and it's you basically creating like a piece of street art. It's like a whole entire sculpture that's going to be on the streets for 10 weeks for loads of people to engage with from all over. So it's not like people are entering into a museum or whatever. They could be walking somewhere to work, taking the bus. So it really diversifies the type of people who get to engage with your work as well.
Exactly, which is critical. And we're going to make sure that we are placed in neighborhoods that don't have, you know, museums, and placed in neighborhoods that don't have necessarily a artistic presence. So one of the things that's important is making sure that everybody has access to art. That, to me, is a right that everybody should have, and access to beauty. And I think a lot of communities have been told in one way or another that they don't need art, they don't need beauty, they need to get on with it. And that's just not true. We all need art, we all need beauty, we all need expression. So please join us, be a part of the expression. If you are a artist from Liverpool, your globe might be in Leicester or in Swansea, enriching a whole other community that maybe you wouldn't engage with. So please do go to our website, and you will be able to directly upload all of your information. And a few quick questions that we've had are text in the work. Text, that you can put text on the globe. That's absolutely allowed. One of the things that we'd like to, I don't want to say discourage, but we can't manage thick applications on the globe. This comes down to health and safety, and it comes down to the integrity of your work. So we don't want anything that someone can rip off. So we have to limit it to a very low texture, essentially. So beads, you can add beads. We can cover the beads with various resins to make sure that they are not pulled off. But you know, little nodules, those we can't handle. They inevitably will, whether it's not even on purpose, it could just be the British weather might do you in. So really, what we're trying to do is keep the expression low. So that doesn't mean just paint. We have someone who's asked about embroidery. Absolutely. Feathers, yes. Beads, yes. We've had some inquiries about braids and hair extensions, and yes, absolutely, just not that thick. So keep that in mind. But we love all these creative ideas, so bring them and we will work with you. If you're a commissioned artist for this project, we will find a solution to make sure that we can get your expression into the globe. We'll wrap up here, but we have 10 days, folks, to get all of your submissions in. So just, you know, carve out a little time this weekend and sit down and send it in and be done. And then you will receive an email from me in the beginning of February saying that we've got your submission. Thank you. We are going to go through. We have a phenomenal jury that's going to be working with us to select all of our ultimate commissions. So please, please, please send your commission in. I'll leave the last word with you, Fiona. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, just to mirror what you've been saying, actually, it's literally, we do have 10 days, and it's just, we don't want you to feel, overwhelmed by the application process. This is one of the things that has put me off of applying for a lot of things, just feeling very overwhelmed. But we're here to support you. And also, there's loads of histories on the website as well, and there's loads of other external resources that we can help point you to if you feel like you need some support in developing your stories. And even after your application, if say we need to ask you some more questions or maybe help kind of fine tune some of the development, we have a whole team of people here to support, including myself and Ashley, to help guide in the whole process, because we know it can feel overwhelming. But if you do have any questions, reach out, email. But we just really, really want to make sure that the word is out there. And please tell all your friends, all your artist friends to apply, because we do have 10 days, and we just really want to make sure that this project is the voice of the people. We have several community groups involved. We do have some invited artists, but we just want to get as many people to be part of this open call. So this is why we've been doing loads of initiatives to get you guys, to encourage you guys to come in.
Perfect. Well, on that note, we send you lots of energy for your submissions, and lots of love from the World Reimagined. Thank you so much, guys, for joining.
Thank you. And follow World Reimagined on Instagram.
Yes, follow the World Reimagined, and again, big shout out to the team. It's always a team effort, from our board members to our staff members to our followers. Thank you. We really appreciate the encouragement and the help. This is going to be a phenomenal project. Thank you, guys. Bye, Fiona. Thank you.
Okay. Bye, everybody.